This is the Bax and Grant Sports Show presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Bax.
And this is Grant.
Grant, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great.
Good. It's a Wednesday, Grant, which means what?
Hump Day!
It is Hump Day here on the Bax and Grant Sports Show. An exciting time as it always is. March Madness is in full swing. NFL free agency is as crazy as ever. And Grant, you're looking good, sir. You're looking real good this Wednesday morning.
Sweatshirt and my shorts.
Nothing makes me more excited, Grant, than... Anyway, we're going to just move away from that before that gets too awkward. Anyway, Grant, how you doing? You doing good?
I'm doing really well.
That's good.
I'm feeling great for a morning, which is weird.
Yeah, you seem a little more
weird.
perky than you normally do, and I'm happy to hear that.
And my wife yesterday was like, because I was like peppy and I was like singing and stuff, and she's like, "Why are you so happy?" And I'm like, "Can't I just be happy for once?" So I always have to
no
be
happiness.
grumpy.
You're married, Grant. No happiness, no excitement, nothing. You're not allowed.
I'm just always expected to be 24/7 grumpy. I guess.
My gosh, you're a father. You're married, Grant. You're miles ahead of me, even though I've got 3 years on you. But anyway, I'll join the ranks eventually, one of these days.
You can take your time. It's
I know.
okay.
Fair enough. All right, Grant. Speaking of joining the ranks, where can the good people of the social media world find us to join our exciting ranks?
You and your transitions.
Thank you.
Just...
Boom! That's what happens when I have coffee in the morning.
Well, they can find us on Facebook at the Bax and Grant Sports Show. You can also find us at Twitter at BG Sports Show. And you can email us at bgsportshow@gmail.com.
Yes, indeed. Remember, we are still looking for... punishment, I guess is the right word, for what's going to happen to the loser of the bracket challenge that Grant and I are doing. Whoever finishes lower in the final standings has to do some sort of embarrassing thing.
We are tied right now.
We are tied. We have ruled out there will be no Kim Kardashian butt poses, though, like Mike Golick did for ESPN's Mike and Mike. So we will not do that, but we're waiting to hear kind of from the rest of you what you think we should do. I'm waiting to see what the good people are. Maybe we should just ask our spouses, but I feel like that probably would be even worse if we turned it over to them to say, hey, Grant and I one of us needs to get embarrassed. How are we going to do this?
Well, I asked Keela, and she immediately went to pink hair.
Pink hair?
Yeah.
It needs to be something that's not going to be, like, detrimental to our well-being.
Your hair color is not attributed to your well-being.
Well, we are on radio, I guess, so it's not as...
Well, but then I was like, well, Baxter is getting married in a couple months.
I don't think my fiance... I've walked down the aisle and she would see me with pink hair and she'd probably turn right back around and be like, you best check yourself. And then we'll think about it and be like, okay.
I'm outie.
Fair enough. Exactly. Well, speaking of being out of there, a lot of more teams, Grant, getting knocked out of March Madness. Transitions again.
I'm going to knock you out with the transitions.
Let's go. Round of 32 action. Megan Landvatter is going to come on in here and join us now. Megan, thank you for joining us as you always do, and we have nothing better to talk about in the sports world. And you kind of you bring us back down to earth because Grant and I are high all over the place, and then you come in and you're like, all right, for real though, guys, like stop. And you do a good job of that, and we appreciate that.
Well, thanks.
You're welcome. So looking back at the round of 32 action for March Madness. Not too many huge upsets, I feel like, in many people's books. You can make an argument about the Wichita State and Kansas game. Aside from that, Michigan State was a big one. Villanova losing to NC State.
Yeah.
Megan, kind of walk us through some of the bigger games that you were maybe a little surprised about.
Yeah, well, I was happy when we got to the round of 32 because then the upsets started kind of happening again. Thursday was crazy. We had 2 3 seeds go out. Mm-hmm. And then Friday was kind of really predictable. Every high seed won, I think, that day. So then to have the upsets come back around, obviously we had Michigan State. Beating Virginia, and then NC State, as you mentioned, beating Villanova. And then we had Wichita State, of course, beating Kansas. So actually, I think Michigan State's a really dangerous team right now. And I think that they could very well beat Oklahoma in the Sweet 16.
Oh, I definitely agree with that. And Grant and I have had this conversation with you a few times that there are certain March-specific teams. You talk about a Louisville, you talk about Wichita State, Michigan State, definitely. And I think now is the time. Even though Michigan State, had a good Big Ten tournament, I think people still forget about the fact that, yes, they lost in overtime to the Badgers, but they took the Badgers to overtime, and they pretty much had that game over. Yeah.
We were scared. We were
terrified.
Ourselves.
Absolutely terrified in that game. And I think Michigan State, just a Tom Izzo coach team, is just so dangerous. And looking even ahead to the next round when they take on Oklahoma, I like their chances in that game.
Yeah, it's all about getting hot at the right time. I mean, in any sports, you talk about playoffs, and it's not necessarily who is the best team in regular season. It's about who's hot right now. And I think Michigan State's very dangerous. And last season, we had, of course, Kentucky, who was a 7 seed, and UConn, who was an 8 seed in the national championship. So
ESPN didn't know what to do with
anything is
themselves
possible.
last year. Like, these teams are way too high seeded. Why are we covering them? It just didn't make sense.
It's kind of like Big Ten if they win both the championship for football and basketball. I think they'd be besides themselves.
They wouldn't know what to do because the ESPN I feel like just doesn't like the Big Ten.
We have to say something positive about the Big Ten.
I feel like they forget that Ohio State's in the Big Ten sometimes because they're like, oh, all this media. Wait, they're in the Big Ten. Shoot! Stop talking about them. Something else. Jameis Winston, Johnny Manziel, something else more appropriate. Like it's
Go
just,
back to the SEC.
Exactly. Go back to the SEC. Something of that nature. The America's Conference. Talk about that. But yeah, it was interesting. As Wisconsin Badger fans, we got a little bit of a scare taking on the Oregon Ducks. Oregon, a team not many people predicted, I think, to go past the round of 32. You might have had those few diehard Oregon fans that are like, we're going all the way. Well, sorry, no. But was Oregon a kind of a wake-up call for the Badgers, Megan? Or how did that game go for them, you think?
I think just the mindset of March Madness is survive in advance. So I think, I know Josh Gosser said after the game, someone asked him, and he's like, I don't care. I don't care if we played like crap. Honestly, we won the game. That's what's important. Yeah, as long as you win, it doesn't matter how you win. Obviously, the Badgers, I think, know that they didn't play very well. In the first half, they missed a lot of their free throws, which was concerning. I think at one point they were like 11 of 19. Don't quote me on that, but it was somewhere around there. And then in the last stretch, of course, when they started fouling, they were able to make their free throws, which was huge. But I think if going forward to North Carolina, honestly, I think if they just play Wisconsin basketball, meaning that they don't send other opponents to the free throw line, meaning they don't turn the ball over, things like that, just the fundamental things, I think that they could easily beat UNC.
And that's something that Wisconsin has been doing well all season, and that's why they have only lost 3 games out of the year, because they kept their fouls down and they kept their turnovers down, and they played extremely stingy defense. And I feel like a lot of people say that they have an explosive offense because they have Frank Kaminsky as being the Big Ten Player of the Year and everything like that, and they have some high-caliber players. But to me, the biggest part of Wisconsin's play, next to efficiency, is their defense.
It is.
That
They
makes
don't
them
foul.
effective.
They just don't. And we've seen that in many games this season, even throughout the tournament, in the Big Ten tournament, that they just don't foul, which is you can be a good thing and can be a bad thing. People will question the lack of physicality on the defensive side, saying, oh, they're too soft, they don't foul. Well, if you can still win games effectively without giving up,
Right.
70 to 80 points a game,
And if you don't,
still doing a good
if
thing.
you can avoid putting other teams in bonus at the end, down the stretch, that could be really important to you. And I think, I don't know if I would say their offense is explosive, but it is efficient.
it is.
And also, Frank Kaminsky didn't have like a huge game against Oregon, but I would like to point out Nigel Hayes as being a person that UNC should definitely look out for, because
Certainly,
he
yeah.
has he's really come up big for the Badgers. Last year he didn't shoot any 3-pointers, and this year he is shooting 40% from the free throw line. So, I mean, not the free throw line, the 3-point line.
3-point line, yes.
Yeah, so he's huge, I think, and he could come up big.
Yeah,
So.
certainly. Well, looking ahead to the round of 16
And I
games,
just
you got
wanted
something
to
to offer.
I just wanted to throw in a quick thing with foul trouble and people saying that if you don't foul that it might be a little weak. Look what happened to Kansas against Wichita State.
Yeah.
They were in already the bonus with not even, I think, half of the first half done. So the first quarter of the game, they were already in bonus. And Wichita State actually didn't do the best job capitalizing, but they could have been in a lot more trouble. And it did give Wichita State the advantage because they had the momentum. They could give up a couple more fouls. They could drive the basket more. They could be a little bit more aggressive. And that put Kansas in a tough spot.
It did, and we saw them not being able to completely cope with that, and Wichita State moving through Kansas with a 78-65 victory, winning the battle for Kansas, as it were. Now, looking ahead to the next round, the round of 16, this is where things really start to get interesting. The real, true teams of March start to emerge, because the first 2 rounds, I think, are really just build for upsets. It's like, okay, you know what's going to happen. Let's sift through it. Let's kind of simulate all the way to the 3rd round, or the 4th round, and figure out life from there. Now, we have a good connection with whatifsports.com. We love using them. We've done things with them for different segments. But now, using whatifsports.com, you're able to simulate outcomes of games, whether it's teams from this year or back to the beginning of time, basically. Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, although, well, maybe not that far. But either way, what we decided to do is take whatifsports.com and simulate the round of 16 games, or the Sweet 16 games, for the NCAA tournament. So, I'm going to go through and read these scores off to you guys, and then you guys each kind of react accordingly, okay? So Kentucky, according to whatofsports.com, beats West Virginia 99-72. I know for me that's not really much of a surprise. I'm not surprised that Kentucky just rolls like they usually do. Any reactions to that?
Well, my only thing with that is, I'm going to pick Kentucky to win this game, but I don't think they'll do it in a fashion as 99-72. A lot of Kentucky's games this year are, they're dominant, but some of them are pretty close, especially of teams that aren't ranked but are still fairly good, like LSU, Louisville, that during conference play almost put their undefeated season in jeopardy. So Kentucky, couldn't be dominant, but they also can leave the door open for other teams and have to pull out a nail-biter.
Yep, exactly. Megan?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that I do have Kentucky winning this game, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a score differential. I think, like Grant just said, it's going to be closer. You look at the Cincinnati-Kentucky game. Cincinnati was right with Kentucky for a lot of the way, so...
Okay. Looking around through the rest of the games, Wichita State, according to What If Sports, defeats Notre Dame 77-66. I'm kind of indifferent on this game, in all honesty. It doesn't really matter to me who wins. I think I'd rather see Notre Dame win, personally.
I would rather see Notre Dame win as well, but I think Wichita State's actually going to get the win just because they're underrated. They might have a chip on their shoulder. They played fantastically against Kansas, and they're just a very solid team right now.
Megan?
Notre Dame has been keeping it too close for comfort for me lately. I have them in my Final Four, therefore I'm going to pick them to win, and I'm just going to pray that they do.
Okay, fair enough. Now, I try to take the unbiasedness off, guys. I'm doing the best I can for this game as well. Wisconsin versus UNC, according to whatifsports.com. UNC takes a 90-86 victory over Wisconsin. Obviously, the scores are, whatever the computer simulated generator does, but even still, UNC defeating the Badgers. If there's a team to do it, I think now is the time where Wisconsin starts getting into that murky water of how good is this team actually, how deep is their bench. I think UNC gives them a tough task, but I think Wisconsin does win it, but not by much.
Yeah, especially if the score gets this high, Wisconsin wins games by keeping the score low. That's how they win games. That's how they've always won games this year. They've won games with 40 points, 40-plus points.
Yep.
But under 50. So... If UNC hits 90, especially, I think that'll definitely...
That's going to put a lot of things in question, yeah.
Right. That'll definitely hand the Badgers a loss. But if Nigel Hayes goes off, Frank Kaminsky gets at least 20, I think the Badgers won't have any problems. If the Badgers play Badger ball and don't give the game, they can win. That's their biggest problem with the Badgers, is that they have to beat themselves.
Yes.
I agree. I have Wisconsin winning. If they play Wisconsin basketball, they'll be just fine.
Okay, short and sweet. I love it. Arizona and Xavier. Arizona takes a 73-63 victory over Xavier, according to whatifsports.com. No surprise for me. Arizona, I think, is going to move along nice and easy. Any objections to that at all?
No, I don't see any upset happening.
Okay, so the group takes that one. NC State versus Louisville. Louisville has an 81-72 advantage over them, according to whatifsports.com. Megan, you were a little upset about this before the show. Tell us why.
Just because NC State has been playing good basketball throughout the tournament, and I think they're one of those teams that's going to be sneaky because they're getting hot at the right time, and I do think that they're taking Louisville down.
Okay, Grant?
Louisville is just a solid team in the tournament. They're a fantastic March team, and they're in a really tough conference to begin with in the regular season. I think they did great in the regular season. I think they'll have no problem beating NC State here. Yeah,
I'm going to agree with that as well. Louisville's too much of a March-specific team, and I think that they will get this victory. Another Big Ten team, the only other Big Ten team alive right now, Michigan State versus Oklahoma. It's a nail-biter, but whatifsports.com says that Michigan State beats Oklahoma 68-67. I don't think it'll be that close, but I think Michigan State will win the game by a maximum of about maybe 8 points.
No, I definitely think it's going to be that close. It's going to come down to the wire, but this is what makes Michigan State such a good team in March, and all the other teams that we've been talking about good in March, is that coming down to the wire, they can pull out the win. So I would take Michigan State with a 1-point victory.
See, I don't think Megan shares our sentiments on that one.
This is a rough pick for me because I think Michigan State could definitely beat Oklahoma, but two things. One, I don't want Michigan State to advance because I don't want to face them in the national championship.
That would be fun, though. That would be fun.
No, it'd be terrifying.
Okay.
Second of all, I have Oklahoma in my national championship in multiple brackets, so Oklahoma must win.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, all
That's
right.
like me and Iowa State.
Yeah, Iowa State. Just,
Rip Iowa State.
Anyway, Utah and Duke. What If Sports must have a really sick, twisted sense of humor because they have Utah winning 75-61 against Duke. Not exactly sure if I agree with that one. I think Duke is going to go at least one more game before they get potentially knocked out. But their side of the bracket's so flimsy. Not exactly sure. I could see Duke losing to Michigan State in the Final Four, but that's about the only team I can really see beating them right now.
Well, we talked about it before the tournament, and we don't think that, or at least I don't think Duke is that high caliber of a 1 seed. I don't think they deserve the 1 seed.
Mm-hmm.
However, I don't think Utah is going to trounce them as much. I could see them maybe winning, but I'm going to go with you and say Duke has at least one more in them.
Yep, I agree.
I'm disagreeing. Duke's going down.
Shocker. Megan never likes us, I swear. She comes on the show just to rattle us a little bit.
I like to create a little drama.
And we appreciate
That's good,
that.
though. It's
exactly. It's good drama. It's not like the weird jealous girlfriend, ex-jealous girlfriend weird drama. Anyway, Gonzaga versus UCLA. According to WhatIfSports.com, Gonzaga's got 88 over UCLA's 56. We didn't even want UCLA in the tournament to begin with, and now I would be very happy with them getting this sort of a beating in this late of the tournament.
And I don't think Gonzaga's going to have any problem taking care of them.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you there.
What?
I know, shocking. No, they've just been good the whole tournament, and they're going to be too much for UCLA to handle.
No, I agree. They're just a dangerous team. So there you have it. So your Elite Eight, according to What If Sports, is going to look like Kentucky versus Wichita State, UNC versus Arizona, Louisville versus Michigan State, and Utah versus Gonzaga. Megan, thank you so much for stopping by today. We appreciate it. Where can the good people of Twitter find you?
They can find me at Landvader812.
All right, Landvader812, Megan Landvader, a writer for Fansided.com and SidelinesApp.com. Check her out, follow her on Twitter, and we'll see you again shortly, Megan. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks.
All right, we're going to take a fast break. When we come back, we're talking NFL stuff. Bill Belichick saying some interesting things about Coach Mike McCarthy of the Green Bay Packers. This is the Backs and Grant Sports Show presented by Sports Radio America. Back to the Backs and Grant Sports Show presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Bax.
And this is Grant.
Grant, first segment, we talked about March Madness. Megan Landvader joined us from Fansided.com and SidelinesApp.com. I know where she writes for. For gosh sakes, I got her those jobs. Anyway, talking something about NFL now, there's a lot of different stuff going on. The NFL Veterans Combine just recently happened. New rule changes are going on. Adrian Peterson, Michael Sam. There's so much going on.
Who's
Darren Sharper. There's just a lot of... It's typical off-season NFL drama is what it really is. Per usual.
And this year, it's just been a lot, especially free agency.
Free agency is just blown up. And Darrelle Revis going to the Jets. He was on Mike and Mike on ESPN this morning talking about that. And they asked him a funny question, and I feel like you'd appreciate this, is that they asked him who the hardest player he's ever tried to cover. And now Darrelle Revis has been in the league long enough where he's had his fair share of, tough guys to cover. And he was like, you guys can't ask me that question. He's like, there's no one it's too hard to pick from. He's like, look, I've covered guys like Terrell Owens, Randy Moss, Chad Johnson, Chad Ochocinco, the alter ego, Calvin Johnson, Andre Johnson, Brandon Marshall. He's like, I've covered all those guys. He's like, every single one has got their own uniqueness about them, and they all are incredibly difficult to cover. He's like, but we've had a good time. Go out there and have a good time. He's like, there's no one wide receiver that I've just been like, wow. I can't handle him. So I mean, he can definitely hold his own. But there's definitely a lot of guys out there that have had their fair share of time on Revis Island.
Yeah, I like that answer.
That is a good answer. Yeah, I thought that was a good answer. So, talking about the NFL rule changes, you've got some of the new information about that, Grant. What's going on with the new proposed and accepted rule changes in the NFL?
Well, there's 5 safety ones and 6 including replay, or 1 including replay, 6 altogether. Excuse me. The biggest one is a safety rule change, which is it's a medical timeout, and there's going to be a third neutral party from I'm assuming the NFL is hired by the NFL.
I would assume so, yeah.
Not the stadium. They are watching the game. It's what happened in the Super Bowl game is because who were they talking about that got injured? Just give me 1 second. It was Julian Edelman. Excuse me. He was rocked pretty hard in the Super Bowl, and he seemed disoriented. Some people said he might have gotten a concussion because they were upset by this because he went on and caught the game-winning touchdown. Now, yes, this medical, I don't even know what you want to call them, medical personnel. I don't even know. They have
it's a neutral third party from the assuming we'd probably be assigned from the NFL that can take a medical timeout. It's not an emergency, but they can stop the game and say, "Hey, I think we should really test this player for concussion protocol to make sure they're okay."
Like to see if they're when they're getting up woozy and stuff like that. So to prevent stuff from worsening and the league getting a bad rap, the owners agreed on it. I think that was a good call. I'm okay with it, and it gives the teams a little extra time to take a breather.
It does, yeah.
Take a timeout. Now, it could be interesting that if the team needs a timeout and the player comes up a little wobbly on purpose,
I wonder how many people might abuse that. That's a good point,
but
though.
It could pull them out of the game. But that's not saying a lesser player could do that. But I guess you could argue everybody's important. But that's just something interesting that I just thought if that might be. Yeah. That could be abused because you're not penalized for it. It's like a official review timeout. It's no team gets penalized in actual timeout,
which is nice because, and I can see how there can be corruption with that. Somewhat, you might be able to influence the medic depending on who it is and say, "Hey, at this specific time of the game,
inflate the medic or deflate it."
Maybe you never know with steroids. Anyway. But with concussions, I don't want to go on too much of a tangent with this, but with the concussions in the NFL, I feel like I just want to say this fast, that I feel like any time that we've seen players get hurt in recent history, they always force themselves back onto the field and the proper techniques are not taken.
Right, even though they have a concussion
protocol
in effect.
Even though they're taking, the protocol's in effect, but it's always, this big guy, and his little trainer, basically, the big guy's like, "No, man, I'm going back on the field." And you don't want to, as a trainer, there's only so much you can do to hold him back. But these players are, throwing away what they should be doing for safety reasons and for the good of the game. And I understand it. Julian Edelman, he scores the game-winning touchdown. He wouldn't have done that had he not been on the field, obviously. But it makes me concerned because how are you going to actually keep these rules in effect if you don't even uphold the ones you have right now, but concussion protocol and saying, "Hey, don't let them go back on the field."
Right.
So it bothers me in that aspect, with how, if a player's hurt, if you are clearly being tested for concussion protocol, I think there's a certain time limit you have to be off the field. And we see these guys that are come up wobbly, the trainers help them off, and they're they come back to and they're no, I'm fine, I'll go back on the field. It's no, if you had a concussion, you need to stay off the field until you are physically, medically, everything cleared to go back on the field.
But then at the same time, you do see instances where there's this guy randomly left and we don't know why, and then it's 5 minutes later, it's the trainers checked him and he has a concussion. He's in the locker room right now. It's I didn't even notice.
Exactly.
So it's sometimes they do a pretty good job of keeping tabs on that.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. Another thing to keep in mind, too, a year of first as there's new rules being implemented. This was the first year for the NFL Veteran Combine. And received mixed reviews, as it were, Grant.
Well, I originally thought it was a good idea because I was players that are in free agency that maybe want a new chance to get with a new team, show that they've improved or not declined, and can show off that they're still capable.
Yes, and that was not the case, though.
Yeah.
It looked like a Sunday recreation football league with all the players out there. It looked like a bunch of guys that used to play NFL football back then. It was like, hey, let's get together, let's go throw the ball around, and you know what, for the heck of it, let's run 40 times as well and see just how slow and fat we all are. And that was basically the case, and which is unfortunate because a lot of these guys, you had running backs like Michael Bush, Felix Jones, Brady Quinn was there, a former, good quarterback in college for Notre Dame, and then spent some time on a few different teams in the NFL. But Michael Sam was there, notably probably the most media attentioned player, and you'll talk about that a little bit more during your rant. Just the results were not there, even though a lot of players were very confident. Like, I thought I did really good. Michael Sam being one of those guys. So the concept of it is good, but at the same time,
right,
you need to take a harder look at who you're inviting to this combine.
Yeah, I think it's more not with who you're inviting, because I think it's fair to invite free agents, give them a chance.
Sure,
but
of
I
course.
think the free agents need to maybe take it more seriously, work extremely hard in the offseason, and prove that they can improve and they can be successful and can contribute to a professional football team. And it didn't really look like that's what was going on.
Nobody really looked like that. It was. No. I remember seeing pictures on Twitter from some of the NFL insiders about some of the 40 times that were run, and they were like, well, you guys were... Usually the running backs have some of the faster times, or the wide receivers, and the running backs, I think the fastest one there was like a 4.8 or a 4.9. It just wasn't...
And what does it remember, like 4.2 or 4?
No, well, like a 4.4, 4.5,
Yeah.
4.6 at like the slow end for college running backs. Like, you don't have that kind of production out of veterans, and I understand they haven't been in the league, they're not used to the speed of it, but at the same time, you should really be able to produce a little bit better than that. And when Michael Bush heard his combine time, he's like, well, there goes my career. He's like, I'm not getting back in the NFL now running a 4.9 or 4, or I think he may even ran a 5 at one point in time. He's like, I've got nothing. No, he's like, I'm not going to be in the league anymore. It's not going to happen anymore. Which it is. It's unfortunate.
Because look at he was revered as one of the best running backs in his time, and now I would argue one of the best. So, I mean, maybe not. He was decent. You could say he was decent on the good end.
He is decent. He's not awful, but Michael Bush is still considered to be a decent running back.
Right. Decent. Not one of the best, but he's fairly decent, I would say. And it's kind of sad to see that for somebody declining. He's not extremely old or anything.
No, I think he's maybe high 20s, if not 30 at the most, but it's not terrible.
But then again, the lifespan for a running back is one of the shorter end, if not probably the shortest position in the NFL. You don't see running backs have 18 season careers like you see some quarterbacks having. They maybe have. It's rare, I think, if you see a running back hit 10 years.
Mm-hmm. It really is.
I think 6 is about the average. 5 to 6 is an average lifespan for a running back.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And talking about lifespans in the NFL, you talk about a coach like Bill Belichick, who's been around for a long time. His Patriots haven't done a whole lot in terms of offseason moves. Yeah, they lost Darrelle Revis and declined, I think it was Brandon Browner's option as well.
Yes, they did.
So aside from that, they haven't done a whole lot. But Bill Belichick yesterday at the coaches' meetings, or owners' meetings down in Arizona, had some nice comments to say about a man very near and dear to both of our hearts, Grant. He went on record to say that Coach Mike McCarthy is one of the best coaches I've ever gone up against. And coming from Bill Belichick, he hasn't been around for 2 years or 6 years or 10 years. The man's been around for a while.
And he has, 4 Super Bowl rings?
At least, yes. I think he has 4 Super Bowl rings to his name.
So definitely a man that knows what he's talking about, knows how to coach a football team, put together a football team. And that's fantastic words for him to say. And Mike McCarthy's team did beat his team this past regular season.
Yeah, 26-21 in a regular season battle at Lambeau Field. It was a great game overall. It was coached very well on both sides of the ball. Both teams really knew what they were doing, but in the end, Mike McCarthy, the young gun, if you want to call him, he's been in the league for a decade, but he's not been around as long as Bill Belichick has.
This is his 16th season.
Yes, Bill Belichick had been around 6 more years than what McCarthy has, and he, to laud McCarthy as saying he's one of the best he's ever coached against, Bill Belichick has coached against a lot of really good coaches.
Right.
Now, the argument was being made yesterday on ESPN Wisconsin, though, of if you consider this statement by Belichick to be true, would you take other coaches over Coach McCarthy? Names like Pete Carroll, Jim, and John Harbaugh were being tossed around. You look at the teams they've had to work with and not, potentially having an Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback and the production that they've had. Yes, the 49ers never won the Super Bowl, but Jim Harbaugh took them to NFC Championship games. He had successful seasons. He lost Alex Smith. He took a whim on Colin Kaepernick. Not a bad deal there. Joe Flacco out in Baltimore with John Harbaugh. Joe Flacco's not an elite quarterback, but he's a good quarterback and still managed to go and win a Super Bowl.
Right.
Kind of like that Trent Dilfer that Baltimore had years previous to that.
But look what Mike McCarthy had to deal with. He had to deal with the end of the Brett Favre era, which was tough. You had to deal with the transition of Aaron Rodgers coming over. You had a 6-10 season, and then I forget their record the following season, where you get to the playoffs, your second season with a new quarterback, which I think is pretty good. You lose in a really close shootout to Arizona, and then the next year you win the Super Bowl. So
it's not a bad start.
And you made the playoffs every year since the Arizona year. The last year they missed it was when they went 6-10 and lost by 3 or less points
for 6 of their games.
Yeah, for the majority of their games.
Yep.
So Mike McCarthy, I would say, is one of the best quarterbacks, best coaches in the league right now. I think it's a shame that he has not won Coach of the Year yet. He's been up there a couple of years, especially their Super Bowl year, he was argued, but he ended up not winning it. I don't think he was a candidate this year.
No.
I don't think anybody could have.
You can't really compete with Bruce Arians.
No, he did a lot of good things with that.
They did, and the Arizona Cardinals organization didn't finish off the season the way they started it, but still,
injuries though.
Injuries is what really killed them. Yeah, and that's part of the game, is being able to coach through adversity, and they still managed to at least get to the playoffs. They lost their first game, but still did good overall.
And that's what Mike McCarthy did as well. If looking at the Super Bowl year, they pretty much played the Super Bowl with all their second stringers.
Basically,
if you look at how many first string guys that they had, like if you look at opening day, first game, their starting roster, and compared it towards a couple of the games at the end of the year, you would say, did they trade away their entire team? Because the majority of them were
basically
gone.
what it felt like. Like when I heard that the Packers, when I was following and noticed that the Packers were going to the Super Bowl against the Steelers, I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to walk all over the Packers, and there just isn't going to be any way the Packers can compete consistently in this game. And thankfully, as Packer fans, that's not what ended up happening.
Right.
So I'll pose this to you as a question, Grant. Do you think that Mike McCarthy is one of the top 10 coaches of all time?
Of all time.
Because I knew 5 would be way too high. Because you can't deny some of those big coaches, but top 10, is that too boisterous at this stage in the game? He's only got 1 ring.
He might be able to squeak out the 10th spot in that top 10, but I think there have been far too many good coaches that have had more illustrious careers. There's a lot of them. I think he's got to coach a couple more Super Bowls.
Yes.
Get a couple more.
He's got a 2-time MVP quarterback on his roster as well.
Right. I definitely think that the Packers at least have a Super Bowl or 2 in them with Aaron Rodgers. I have them. I don't see them slowing down at any time here.
No, certainly not. I think you've got at least another 5 to 7 years of really, really good Packers football coming with Aaron Rodgers before you start to see a steady decline.
Right. So Mike McCarthy, I still feel that he might be able to claim the 10th spot, but I think it might be too early to say that he's an elite coach of all time. And this time right now, I'd say I'd put him within the top 3.
At current
coaches.
Okay, current state. I was like,
top
top 3, but okay.
Top 3
current coaches at this moment. Okay, well, hey, you guys at home, let us know what your thoughts are about that. Hit us up on Twitter, BG Sports Show. For those of you watching on Meerkat Live, let us know about that as well in the comment section below. Let us know who you think. Where does Mike McCarthy rate in as top coaches overall in the NFL? And will we see him in the top 10? And do you agree with Bill Belichick's comments as well? Grant, it is time for your rant now, sir. All right, so for those of you that don't know, Grant's Rant is the part of the show where Grant comes out and sings a silly song. No, that's not it. That's Larry the Cucumber, but Grant is cute and cuddly just like a cucumber some days. But anyway,
Thanks.
Grant, the way it works, Grant gets 30 seconds on the clock to talk about whatever he wants in the sports world, and all I can do is sit back and watch. and hope that he just doesn't tear me apart. I'm waiting for one of these days where his rant is going to be about me for not bringing him coffee, or that's intern Laura's job, for gosh sakes, who's not here today, which is very sad.
Unfortunate.
It is. Intern Laura is not here today. She's out on assignment, so wish her well on Twitter, intern Laura BGSS. Anyway, Grant, 30 seconds on the clock. Get set and go.
Well, Michael Sam performed at the Veteran Combine, which I don't think you could even call him a veteran, and the GMs called him flat out horrible. Now, I just want to say quick, I don't have any problem with the gay lesbian community, and I know a lot of gay people, and they're good friends of mine, but I think Michael Sam is overhyped, over media. The GMs and scouts said that he felt like a superstar even though he doesn't play like one, and that was really upsetting when I heard that.
It is. It's very upsetting.
If you let me, I just want to continue a little bit more, because I wanted to preface that but I forgot to tell you.
You're fine. Go ahead.
I don't have any problem with the gay lesbian community, so please don't say that I'm being rude to them. I just don't think that he is treating the media that he got very well. I think it's great that he got drafted. I think it's great for him. Yes, I think he did get a lot overhyped, and my problem with it is he regressed. He didn't look like he worked at it. He felt like he was a superstar and that he was just going to be given the NFL because he was the first gay player. Now, if he handled the situation any differently, I would support him. But how he's acting, it really upset me when I heard that, and I don't think he deserves to be in the NFL. People are saying he's probably not going to be in the NFL, and with his attitude, if this is true, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, no, I'd have to agree with you on that one as well. All right, we're going to take a fast break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the NBA MVP race, then also touch on some NFL power ranking or NHL power rankings. This is the Bax and Grant Sports Show presented by Sports Radio America. Welcome back to the Bax and Grant Sports Show presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Bax.
And this is Grant.
Grant, we've had a fun show so far. Megan Landvetter of Fansided.com and Sports App Sidelines. I'll figure it out eventually. I know where anyway, she was here earlier, a very distinguished writer. We love her very much, and she was on sharing her thoughts on March Madness in our first segment. Talked about the NFL, Michael Sam, Coach McCarthy, a lot of other exciting things in the second segment now. In our last segment, as we always do, we try to blaze through a few different topics. Speaking of blazing, Grant, the MVP race in NBA is just, it looks like there's one clear winner that is just blazing past everybody, and that's Mr. Steph Curry.
But I would say that he's not blazing past, kind of like, I consider blazing past the competition as being J.J. Watt when he won Defensive MVP of the Year. There was no other candidate because nobody could really compete with J.J. Watt. Now, Steph Curry, you have, yes, of course, Steph Curry, but you also have James Harden, who is putting up fantastic numbers, and Russell Westbrook, who was unfortunately just robbed of, the sixth straight triple-double or whatever?
It would have been his 10th total, but yes, I think it would have been his sixth or seventh straight triple-double for him.
Yeah, so he is putting up fantastic numbers. You could also say Chris Paul and Anthony Davis, and, everybody always throws in LeBron James.
The king!
But yeah, Steph Curry right now is playing fantastic. And
he really is.
He's just dirty to watch sometimes. There's a commercial on right now. I don't know if you've seen it, but I watch it frequently because I watch a lot of the tournament right now.
Of course.
And there's just one talking about Steph Curry, and there's a replay of him just throwing up a dirty shot it was against the Bucks. And
Of course it was.
He's charging the lane. He gets a foul, and he's like going away from the hoop. His back is to the hoop, and he just throws it up there and kisses off the top glass and just swishes in, not even touching the rim. I'm like,
I love it.
What is going on?
Stop it.
Like, just
Stop it
rude,
now.
Rude.
Oh, my Lord.
He's just a fantastic player, and his three-point ability too is phenomenal. So I would say that, yeah, he
makes almost half of the three-pointers that he attempts. His average right now is .422 for three-point percentage this year, which is ridiculous.
And his field goal percentage is 48 almost. It's .479.
Yeah.
So that is fantastic for almost hitting 50% of your shots.
It really is.
Yes, he is. He is a fantastic player, but I wouldn't say that he is unanimously.
I think he's unanimously the best player in the league right now. Russell Westbrook, I understand he's got a lot more going on for him, that he's doing individual things. James Harden has really turned Houston around this year, but Steph Curry, Golden State, just a dangerous team overall, and just a team that I feel like they already clinched their division. They're arguably the best team in all of the NBA right now. It's just hard to argue against them. Similar, Grant, to your St. Louis Blues. It's hard to argue against the St. Louis Blues right now.
Yeah, it is.
It is. Switching over to our NHL Power Rankings, brought to you by ESPN.com. Grant, what do you got going on in the newest edition of the Power Rankings?
Well, the Power Rankings, have New York Rangers, St. Louis Blues, Chicago, you got Chicago Blackhawks, Tampa Bay, Minnesota Wild in the 5th spot, Anaheim Ducks, Montreal Canadiens, the Winnipeg Jets, Ottawa Senators, and the Detroit Red Wings. Now, the big notes to look at is the Winnipeg Jets and the Ottawa Senators. Now I will flip over to the actual rankings. And
I have one question for you, real fast. Sorry, this question came up the other day. I was talking with some of my hockey people that I know aside from you. I know more hockey people than just you. For the Vancouver Canucks, the Canucks mascot name used to be a derogatory term for Canadians. And I don't know if you know anything about that in terms of if that's more socially acceptable now. I mean, obviously there's a team named the Canucks, so is it okay if the Canadians say it? Is it not okay if us Americans say it?
It's not like a strong derogatory, like a racial term. Like,
Sure.
Like, I'm not going to say it, but like what we're more familiar with dealing with an African American or an Asian race. It's not anything like that. It's kind of like, oh, you're a Canuck dairy or something like that.
I was wondering about that because that came up in conversation, and they were like, yeah, Canuck used to be a derogatory term. And I'm like, wait.
From what I've understood it's just more, it's kind of like a making fun of thing.
Oh, okay.
Kind of
like,
you
Canuck there.
Like you're a Yooper or something like that.
Okay. That's all I was curious about. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. Now, why I wanted to point out the Winnipeg Jets and the Ottawa Senators is because they're holding down the last wild card spot, and they have for the Ottawa Senators, the Boston Bruins are only a game behind them right now, and a point behind them. And the Winnipeg Jets, they're only 4 points ahead of the LA Kings, and that's a pretty big deal. Well, you could argue actually because the Calgary Flames have 86 points and the LA Kings have 84 points, so you could argue that there's 2 points, but we won't get into that. That's just confusing. But
it is.
Anyway, my argument is it's fairly close right now, and the Winnipeg Jets and the Ottawa Senators are playing very well right now. The Winnipeg Jets have won 5 in a row, and the Ottawa Senators have won 7 in a row.
Wow!
Now that's what you need to do to keep your
playoff push.
Yeah,
right
that's how you keep your playoff hopes alive. So those are my big notes to mention right now, and with the Montreal Canadiens have 100 points right now.
Wow! Is that typical of hockey to have teams hit over 100 points?
Yes, it happens. The Blues did it last season, I believe.
Oh, well, good for them.
Yeah, it happens. It happens every once in a while.
Okay,
or not every once in a while. It pretty much happens every season. But NHL.com is giving me something different, but I'm pretty sure on my ESPN app on my phone that Montreal Canadiens had 100 points and the St. Louis Blues had 99, and a couple other teams have 99 points. So the President's Trophy, unlike last year where you pretty much just had the Boston Bruins and the St. Louis Blues in contest for the President's Trophy, this year it's a couple other teams in the mix.
Well, we'll have to see what kind of happens up with that. I know I briefly mentioned this to you. I play the app Daily Bracket where you get to choose 5 different sporting games every day, kind of make your predictions about that. I went 4-5 yesterday. I was really mad because the one hockey game that I picked at, and I thought it was a lock, I got screwed over on because the LA Kings decided to go do some very not nice things.
I guess that goes to show you that NHL games aren't really a lock because anything can really happen. And what I was actually saying before the show, only 6 teams of the 30 NHL teams are below 500 right now. And that goes to show that I think that any team can really win in this league.
That's true.
Unless you're really awful, like the Buffalo Sabres or the Edmonton Oilers, or pretty much any Canadian team.
It's a rebuilding year for the Buffalo Sabres this year, right? But anyway, Grant, I want to talk a little bit about What If. As we know, it is What If Wednesday. So the way it works on Wednesdays is Grant and I throw each other a what if question about anything to do with the sports world, and we have to give our reaction. So, floor is yours.
Well, this morning I was perusing the Facebook, just for fun, and I found a video of Brett Favre's very first comeback win.
What a guy.
Against the Cincinnati
Brett
Bengals.
Favre.
That was great to watch. It was like a legend was born or something like that. And
Well, he is a legend. He's a true legend.
he is a true legend. But it was like his first comeback victory. It was awesome. My thing is, what if that never happened?
What never happened exactly? You got to phrase that in a better way. What if he never had a comeback win? He had tons more after that.
Yeah, but what if he did not have that comeback win? Do you think it would affect him as a player if he lost that game? Would it affect him mentally, and then he wouldn't play as well in that season? And then he wouldn't be as big as we know him today? Maybe the Packers would have just traded him off?
No, I think he would have still been as good as he was. I think that, yes, he may not have, even if he doesn't win that one game, the NFL is full of chances to have comeback wins, and I feel like he would have found his niche somewhere else and been able to figure out his victory from there, his legacy from there. So I don't think it would have affected him too much.
Okay.
Because you see players all the time win and lose potential comeback victories.
But then if you're the Browns and you have Hoyer and you have one bad game, then you get rid of him.
Exactly, and you start a guy that's in rehab. Actually, he's out of rehab now. Johnny
Oh,
Rehab
he's
is out of
officially out of
rehab now. All right, so my what if for you, Grant, my good friend
What was
Grant.
that?
I don't know who I was going to
Grant?
call you. Grant.
Your
What if, Senor Grant, what if the Minnesota Wild make it to the NHL Finals or Stanley Cup Finals?
The Stanley Cup Finals?
Stanley Cup Finals.
They're going to win. I think they're a favorite right now to win. Just the streak that they're on right now. They had a fantastic January, February, and are continuing to have a fantastic March. They beat the St. Louis Blues twice, 6-3 the first time, 3-1 the first time, and was outshot like 42-13 or something
like that. Yeah.
And then they beat the Blues 6-3, and the Blues are a favorite or one of the favorites to go deep into the playoffs right now.
Woo! We'll see. Minnesota Wild making a name for themselves.
And the Wild might have a pretty good chance of playing the Blues because if they get the third spot over Chicago, and they're only 5 points behind Chicago right now, so if they pass up Chicago, and a couple things would have to happen, but the St. Louis Blues could easily play the Wild in these playoffs, so that'd be scary.
It would be wild. Ha! See what I did there?
Stop.
I'm sorry. Anyway, this has been another edition of the Baxter and Grant Sports Show presented by Sports Radio America. No intern Laura today. She's off on assignment, so send her your best wishes. You can hit her up on Twitter at intern Laura BGSS. Grant Coppersmith, where can the good people of Twitter find you?
They can practically actually find me more on Facebook.
More than likely, yes.
You can also just tweet at BG Sports Show because I'm on that more.
It's true.
But I mean,
too.
If you really want to, you can go at CU Smith 94, which is my Twitter, but I don't visit that one.
Exactly. All right, and you can find me at Baxter Colburn as well on Twitter. So thank you so much for tuning in to another edition. We'll see you guys all on Friday. Connor Christensen will be here, and intern Laura will hopefully be back. It'll be a party like it always is. Thanks to you guys for watching on Meerkat, and we'll see you all on Friday. Grant, what is it?
Hump Day!
See ya!